Welcome to the Catch the Tornado podcast. Giant Swarm provides an API-driven open source platform that enables businesses to daily provision and scale Kubernetes clusters together with a wide set of managed services. Some of its customers include leading organizations from Fortune 500 to technology-first companies. Today, Markus Lorenz speaks to Oliver Thylmann, the co-founder and CCO of Giant Swarm. The two have a very honest conversation about customer service, understanding customer needs, collaboration, and building strong, trustworthy business partnerships. Oliver also shares plenty of insights on building a fast-developing company, as well as building lasting relationships within the company itself, even in a remote environment. Tune in.
Welcome to a new episode of the beCommerce podcast. As you know, we rebranded our podcast to address more topics in the e-commerce industry, and our today's guest fits perfectly in that shape. Please welcome Oliver Thylmann. Oliver is co-founder of Giant Swarm, and I would call him definitely a serial entrepreneur. Giant Swarm, his actual company, is providing a full-service container platform with a special focus on microservices, which is basically built for developers. And through their flexible setup, they can attach any storage backend you might have, give a full automated Kubernetes infrastructure or other toolings around running microservices on the top of the stack. Very cool. But Oliver, please introduce yourself, the company, and please tell us why your Twitter profile says you're a developer whisperer.
Hi, thanks for having me, first of all. So it's wonderful to be here. So me, Giant Swarm, I actually started in this internet business in end of the 90s, like first internet bubble, did internet statistics and lots of different things. I actually did SEM before it was called SEM, and bid on GoTo and other things. So really been in this entire thing early, very early, and built several companies in the advertising space, also retargeting, which is where the e-commerce part also comes in, obviously. I always explain people that AdCloud, the company I had previously, is one of those companies that made the shoes follow you around in the internet. So that's always my explanation of what we did there.
Yeah, nice.
Now we're actually, to a certain extent, again in the e-commerce market. So Giant Swarm now 6-7 years old, fully distributed, fully remote. We built the stack we wanted to have for our company while we looked for something else to do after we sold the last one to Deutsche Post DHL in 2011 and left AdCloud in 2013. Really looked around, looked at lots of different things, and built what we have now on the side while building a non-profit. And other companies wanted to have it too, because in the end, what we figured is that microservices is a correct trend. Developer-led enterprise is a trend that is happening. API-driven infrastructure is a trend. And with Kubernetes as a base building block in the entire thing, we see that there is a very good abstraction layer in the sense that developers build software and deploy it through Kubernetes, and somebody else manages that platform, which is why we provide it as a fully managed service and have built ourselves a platform that allows us to manage hundreds of Kubernetes clusters with lots of different tools in there, be it just a monitoring stack or be it a database or other things that we manage for our customers, and do that at scale for especially bigger customers. Examples would be Deutsche Telekom, Adidas, the entire e-commerce backend of Adidas, so I know e-commerce and the importance of not having downtimes, Shutterstock in the US, and many others. But it's always big commercial toolings. Klingel is another one that runs their many, many different web properties through us, where they all figured that Kubernetes is not their core competence, and hence they said, well, Giant Swarm should help us handle that and just give us more speed and more reliability.
That's super interesting, Oliver. So you mentioned a stack of customers, which is very impressive from my perspective. And also you mentioned during your conversation one one other important topic from my perspective, which is the people, that you're completely remote. And maybe we figure out today those two dimensions. So the two dimensions, people and customers, and why people are happy working at Giant Swarm, and what makes your customers happy in the end. Because I know that you're Chief Customer Officer at Giant Swarm, so you're the CCO, and maybe the audience is not very familiar with that wording, CCO. Maybe you can introduce a little bit the duties of the CCO. What is your purpose at Giant Swarm, actually?
I always tend to say I'm responsible for all our customers when they're there. I'm not there for the acquisition of new customers. I'm there for taking care of that our customers are happy and are using the platform as optimally as possible. And that really means running our account engineering and solution architecture part of the company. So to explain that a bit, we have account engineers that are responsible for customers and that just take care of their needs, and solution architects that are sitting inside the different teams. So we have a team around AWS, a team around Azure, a team around managed apps, a team around monitoring, and so on and so forth. And the solution architects sit in those teams and are the specialists for these subjects and get pulled in by the account engineers into the customer meetings we have. And we have weekly or even sometimes 2 weekly meetings with customers, and really not only run the infrastructure for them, but also help them to get into this cloud native microservice way of working, agile way of working.
Okay, super cool. So that means if you're responsible for that dimension on the customer side, what is important for you in general to make your customers happy? Because in the end, you have very big logos on your side. And what is important for you as a CCO to keep them happy, and which services maybe from your side make them happy?
I think one thing we're focusing on is very transparent and open communications. We make clear from the beginning that we're in this together and we need to walk the path together. It's not about a certain goal. It's about having an enjoyable time while doing it. And that open communication is, I think, the biggest distinguishing factor. We don't shy away from saying it's our fault. We don't shy away from saying it's your fault. Without fault being a blaming system, but about just figuring out what we need to improve. And I think that's the crucial thing, that we really believe in Agile, in the fact that it's build, measure, learn, and you iterate quickly. And that's the important part, I think. And that's what makes customers happy, that it's so different. It's not you issue a ticket here and then Giant Swarm starts to work and throws the issue back and so on and so forth. And it goes as far as like how do I make sure that customers are happy? First we talk to them weekly, so we kind of know, like we ask, are you happy, to a certain extent, and we sometimes have very, very close relationships. We share spaces and houses at conferences with customers. Nice. We have monthly meetings. We started that in Corona times, monthly remote meetings with customers where we ship around beers or wines or cocktails and have customers hold talks. Like we don't talk. We talk. I'm moderating the entire event, but it's customers talking about subjects that are relevant for them. And then we have an interaction between customers. We really connect customers a lot to make sure that they talk to each other. Because I mean, I can have a suggestion on security tooling, but it's a lot better for different customers to talk to their experience with different security toolings and to grow together, because they actually can talk openly and they figure that out in those meetings, that we're actually very frank and open. And try to share and try to make sure that these are the problems we still have that we need to overcome. And we're not saying, oh, that doesn't exist and we don't want to talk about it. So I think that's important.
Super cool. So open and honest conversations with the customers from that what I get is important for you over having racy metrics and contract details. That's I totally underline that, and basically important for the collaboration with the customer. And basically, how you're managing the customer happiness? Are you choosing NPS tools or others?
Oh yeah, I have that discussion often. I don't have NPS or anything else. We don't like. We're discussing from time to time if we need some kind of tooling, but at the moment we don't. We don't have that many customers, and my goal is to really know them, and for the account engineers to really know them, and to create an atmosphere where they will say if they don't like something. I want to really understand, like, I don't care for a 9 or a 10, and we had that from time to time, and then you get back a 9 and it says, yeah, because you don't give it 10. Like, okay. So,
Got it, yeah.
So it's really, it's again that open community. I want to know them and do it like that.
Yeah, I got it. It was just referencing to that measure thing, and I was interested how you're doing that. But if you're not that broad scape of customers and you're really looking for special ones, then this approach fits totally from my perspective. Yeah. So from your observation as a CCO, why are customers not happy with the suppliers, especially in the tech industry when it comes to service offerings from tech vendors or agencies?
Boy, that's a hard one. Why are they not happy? I think I can say why we're different. For example, if there's a P1 issue, and if something really happens, the message goes directly to one of the core engineers that built one of those systems. Like, we breathe DevOps. We built that platform and we manage that platform and we really think about it. And it's the same thing in the other direction. Like, it's not only if you build it, you run it. If you run it, you need to have built it. And it pings directly the person that has built it. We don't ping some kind of level 1 whatever support engineer that has a list of questions to go to and then escalates later. And I think that's a big difference. We have a hard time explaining why our managed Kubernetes sometimes different now, because like you have AWS has managed Kubernetes. The big difference is we have managed Kubernetes in the sense that we have dedicated people managing it and helping you and telling you what to change on your end and changing stuff on our end and working together to make it into a reliable solution. Managed Kubernetes on AWS is a managed master. That's actually it. The rest you still need to build up. For us, it's you press a button and a cluster is there with toolings in it and monitoring in it and so on and so forth. And it's being monitored by people and so on and so forth. So I think that's a big difference. And I think we have that engineering mindset. Like, it's really we're getting better by the minute. We're telling you when something is wrong and we're improving it. And where we have the developer mindset that we need to get there together with you bit by bit, and we need to know what we're talking about. And we get questions and we have a real engineer answering. Yeah, and I think that's the important part, that you don't get, let me ask somebody, you get a real answer quickly.
Yeah, that's super cool. So that's more an engineering approach rather than sales approach, which you mentioned. And this also leads me to my next question, because you mentioned beforehand that you're not taking care about sales from your side. From my observation, it's crucial to understand within the sales phase the customer. So understanding customer really deep in the first phase of the collaboration. And how do you ensure on Giant Swarm's side that you get the customer needs in a complex ecosystem so that you deeply understand what are their pain points and how you solve it? Because from my observation, sometimes you have sales guys on the market who are just over-promising and don't understand really the business needs and how they transfer it into technical requirements. So how you ensure that?
Well, first of all, I think we have good salespeople.
Of course.
And buzzword bingo, consultative selling. Like we can't just go in anyway and say like, this is the solution, now go. It doesn't work. And once we're at a certain stage with the customer, the account engineers start joining the calls. So we'll figure out who is the account engineer that has a fitting customer profile, where they can start telling stories from other customers that fit the solution that the new customer is looking for. So to a certain extent, these account engineers are a bit of pre-sales to a certain extent also. Pre-sales engineer, how they are sometimes called. We're trying to create that mix and not have it too far split. It's just, I'm in many of those calls too. It's just that it's not my responsibility to drive that sales part forward, which is again a totally different game and about like, okay, how do you get that funnel going and how does that work and how do you make it repeatable and so on and so forth. I like relationships, and that relationship isn't there at the beginning. So there we have to figure out how to make that, to create that. Another thing we often do is we just connect them with customers early on. We just say, okay, you seem to be very similar to customer X. We have a chat. And then they come back, I want the same thing that customer. It's a lot more convincing that a customer tells them what they like about Giant Swarm than me saying, I think we're good. Yeah, of course you do.
So we're back on that open communication, which you figured out at the first hand. And for me, also listening to clients is important because you're improving the competitiveness of your current services. You learn something new about your services, maybe where you have to add something. You also identify your opportunities to develop new services. So that means if a customer comes up with a new problem as a service company, you said, oh, shit, maybe we don't have that service right now, but it sounds interesting. So let's do it together. And if you don't avoid feedback from your clients because you learned, then you are basically a more effective competitor, you know.
Yeah, and especially I think the important part is, as you said, listening. And I always joke, I was called by one of the big out there recently, and the first thing the sales guy said, so what are your problems? That's not listening. Like, you know, that's the standard. You don't freaking care. You know, you really don't. Like, you need to really listen and make sure you have empathy, and then people start talking. They start talking to you because you really care. And then you figure out other things and know, okay, well, this managed Kubernetes might not be the first step, but you actually need a few apps in there, but we have 3 of the 5 apps you need, and the others might be coming. So can we start there? Do we start with the trade? Like, this isn't a clear path. This isn't a SaaS service you sign up with your credit card with. You know, it's more complicated.
But it's about that you give more than you would expect in the first phase, I would say, because then you're on the point with the customer in the end. And also observe that when it comes later on to the collaboration with the clients, you have this 2 dimensions: the work of service versus the quality of service. And in my opinion, there's a huge difference between the quality of the work and the quality of the services. So only when a service and the work from the service of the company is perceived well from the client, you did your job well. So how you measure or manage your quality of service, because it sounds like that you're doing amazing quality of service, you know?
Yeah, but there we have the same problem as a security tool. Like, we suck if it breaks, and otherwise you just don't notice. We have very, very, very few downtimes, and we have a lot of alerts that are coming in that we fix without ever telling the customer. And we're trying to, again, make them transparent as possible and just show customers what we're doing. You know, because many of these things are proactive. Like, we get alerts before it breaks on their side, and we fix it before it breaks. And that is what we're trying to show, but it just involves a lot of statistics, you know, just telling them these are the number of alerts, and explaining we want alerts to happen. Like, it's not that 0 alerts is good, 0 alerts is not good. We like missed something. And we want lots of messages in Slack with our customers, so they ask lots of questions. If they don't ask questions, we see a problem because they don't develop further. We just want to be sure that they understand that we're actually doing something. Because otherwise, the quality of service is great. Like, stuff is running. And for us, the problem is rather that it's so good that they stop coming to the meetings and stop coming to Slack because it just runs. And then we start seeing a problem. Because then it's not that it's too good, it's that they don't notice anymore. And that's what we need to make sure.
I got that point. Interesting. What is about your employees on Giant Swarm? So I perceive the following when it comes to service company. You have to train your employees in a way that they are realizing how to get the customer satisfied and to get rid of this, hey, this is not my term, or this is not my responsibility, this is a different department, and so on and so forth. So how you are engaging your own employees regarding customer satisfaction and make them aware that the customer satisfaction is one of the most priority or the utmost priorities you have on the company.
Two things. First of all, it's onboarding. Like, we make sure they join us in meetings and figure out how we talk to the customer. Because how we talk to the customer, as I said, is probably very different. A lot more frank and a lot more open and a lot more direct. Where other, like, what did you just tell? Like, we always give the example. We had a guy that got a request from a customer at 18:30, 7 o'clock in the evening. Can we still do this? And one of the solution architects messaged me okay, I really haven't eaten yet, and I need to eat something because it's really even later here because there's a time difference and stuff. And what do I do? Tell the customer that you're currently hungry and that you need to eat something, and if it can wait for tomorrow. The customer, yeah, sure, it can wait for tomorrow. No problem. Thanks for telling me. Telling them a reason it just works very well. The other thing is, as much as the customer is the most important one, there are other things that are more important. We always say, first of all, our people are most important. Because happy people build a good product, and the good product leads to happy customers. Absolutely. Happy customers doesn't work from that setting out. So it's really we make sure our people are happy, and we make sure they can say anything to the customer and we have their back. I delegated a job to you, so if you screw up, it's my fault.
Yeah, I got it.
And we need to make sure they feel secure there. I might rip their head off in a private meeting afterwards, but towards the customer, I will never.
Yeah.
And that security is important, so they can have that honest conversation. And I think if you make sure they understand that they just need to answer honestly, then the customer is satisfied of getting an honest, real answer, and all things come by themselves.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely interesting. Maybe we switch to that second part of the interview today, because we're actually deeply involved to your employees, and I really like that methodology to say happy people will, or a good product will follow by happy people, which you mentioned. And as far as I know, you built that company completely remote from the first day. So you built everything remote, what we can imagine, or what a professional company needs. What are your core principles to build that remote first tech company?
I like, there's a book by D. Hook, Birth of the Chaotic Age. He's the guy that founded Visa, and the founding principle of Visa is what would be the nature of the ultimate corporation for the exchange of value. And to a certain extent, it was a similar thinking. What would be the nature of the ultimate corporation to help other companies to go in that cloud native direction, and to provide such a service? And one thing you notice is we need specialists and very good people, and we will not be able to make them move all to London or Berlin or whatnot. It actually doesn't make sense. So remote kind of makes sense. We think infrastructure will be open source anyway. And open source helps, especially because it's by developers for developers. So we actually They all have their own kind of area of responsibility, so we have less problems. Like many of the big remote companies, like WordPress, are based on open source products.
Yeah.
So I think that also is important. And then we really just came from that. And what principles do we have? I don't know principles. I think there are some things that are important if you're fully remote. First, you have to be fully remote, like half doesn't really work.
Absolutely.
So you can't have half a team in an office and then sometimes a remote person joins. That doesn't work. So you need to be fully Meet-based or Zoom-based, whatnot, and Slack-based, and have everything documented and written down. And you need these asynchronous communications there. You need some kind of water cooler talk system, and you need to make people understand that Slack is our office space. So people need to over communicate in Slack. Like we say good morning in a random channel. We have lots of different chat channels where people just join and post screenshot from Hangouts, like chat screenshot, or we have sports and we have cooking and we have nature and we have photography and we have
Cool.
dozens and dozens of different channels that people can join and just have a conversation. And we always tell people that they need to be in those chats and need to be visible, because otherwise it's like them walking into the office under a blanket, not seeing everybody, going to their desk and not talking to anybody. You wouldn't do that in an office either. So you need to be active.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really important. And that's one of the most important things. And then, as stupid as it sounds, trust is important. Like in an office and outside of an office, people can very efficiently not work and still seem to be working. But that works in the office the same way as it works sitting at home. So I need to motivate people, and they need to feel like they need to work and they need to do something important, and they can do something important and work with the team. And that's what we make sure. Like we try to hire motivated people.
Okay. Hiring is basically also a good phrase. So the next question here will be how you hiring the remote employees. From our perspective, it's a little bit different to hire people who are remotely, also skill-wise and attitude-wise, rather than to hire people on site. You have to have a kind of mindset to work on your own in your home office. So from my perspective, you need a little bit different skill set rather than people you having on site who need strong leadership or strong guardians in some ways. What do you think about that hiring process and attitude versus skills?
Well, I think first of all, we do pay attention that we feel they can work remotely. We had people that just couldn't.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's fully fine, but there are people that just can't. We have a tiny benefit that we always wanted people that don't need to be managed. Like that was always the case. We always say we have a pull-based culture instead of push-based culture. Like if you go into a Slack channel and say, I think this needs to be changed, and nobody answers, the expectations is you do. Nobody.
Okay, that's cool.
And you need these kind of people. You need people that get stuff done. I say that in the sense also that we have all the freedom, and we don't count hours, we don't count work days, we don't count holidays, we don't care when you start, when you stop. You have your certain meetings in your teams, and you need to coordinate with them how you do it. But other than that, you are responsible for getting your stuff done. And the entire freedom thing only works with people that have the tendency of wanting to get things finished. If you're just procrastinating, it doesn't really work. And I think that's the two things. We want people that want to get stuff done and are self-starters and self-motivated. And at best, you had experience working remotely. Because otherwise it will just be hard in a fully remote company to not have an office at all.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're sitting home alone, never did it before, it's a little bit of crucial to structure your day. But on the other side, you have very cool upsides if you're working for a remote company. I mean, same on my side. You can spend some time with the family, also working professional because you know and you're in charge to make the clients happy or your employees happy. And you just can split and the day business-wise and also private, according to private life in the end. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, are there any roles which you actually add to the company which are only seen in a remote company, so which doesn't exist in a normal company?
I don't think so. I don't like. Do we have a different split? But I would probably do it the same way, even if it were a non-remote company. Like we have MOCs in every team, masters of ceremony, but that's an agile thing. It's just that we might have a few more communication meetings. It's more a structural thing. Like we have special interest groups and so on and so forth around different subjects that meet again and again. But I don't think we have really different roles. It's a different awareness in people that they need to talk to other people, and we're trying to force them to meet others to a certain extent.
Yeah,
so
that makes total
that's
sense.
what the special interest group is about. That you meet around security with other people you normally don't meet with.
Yeah.
That's also like we try to do 2 on-sites a year where we like get everybody together. And the big focus there is just mingling around, like meeting other people inside the company.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's just really hard otherwise.
So you're dealing with that physical loneliness, which is actually a downside of that remote culture, and that way that you're bringing back the people twice a year together. That's pretty cool.
Well, we also have we try to have lunch together on Thursdays at 1. Like, yes, it's in front of the camera, but it's still a different setting. And we try to do some social activities left and right also between those on-site meetings. But yes, when we started the on-sites, we actually had a lot of strategy meetings, and sooner or later we figured out we can do strategy remotely. What we can't do remotely is just hang out together.
Yeah.
So the big focus is a week of hanging out together in diverse groups.
Sounds like a very solid plan and place to work on, to be honest. How you're orchestrating that day in the remote company? I mean, you talked a lot about the structure itself, about the people, but you're also working across different time zones, and how you're dealing with meetings, interruption of works, and so on and so forth in that asynchronous way.
Well, we're trying to have as few meetings as possible, and it's all down to the teams. So every Giant Swarm employee is in a team. The team decides their ceremonies in the end. We just advise younger teams to have a daily stand-up. They all have retros and so on and so forth. So there's a few meetings in the teams. Then there are a few meetings in the special interest groups. And we try to allow people to at least say, like, this is my meeting-free day or meeting-free afternoon or meeting-free whatnot. And they can try to schedule that themselves.
Okay, that's interesting.
Otherwise, it gets too much. But it's individual and team.
Yeah, because if the company is growing, we're actually facing the problem that if you have more employees, so actually we are on 300 employees and more, that you have to follow some rules if you're working remotely. When is the meeting-free day, or when are you available to work, and so on and so forth. So you have to regulate a little bit more rather to put it on the individual, so to say.
But meaning, like, meeting-free day on your end is like the same day for everybody?
Actually, we figure out a solution how we deal with that, because if you would make it properly for every person, or make it possible and free to choose for every person, you are facing the situation that you don't have the people on the place when you need them in front of the customer, for example,
Mm-hmm. So how do you do it?
Actually, I don't have the right answer. So we're trying to figure out we try to figure out different concepts for it. But every concept has a pro and a con, so to say. But if the team is getting bigger, we realized that we have to structure it more and make some guardians for the whole team for that.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So we learned a lot about your culture, how you structure the company, and so on and so forth. Is there one advice which you would give a new company which is actually founded and the founders itself, how they should start a remote first company?
The only thing I can say is you can't do it half-assed way. Like either you go remote or you don't. You can't have your founding team all sitting together and then do the company remotely. That doesn't work. So if you do it, the entire company needs to be remote, and you need to be able to do everything remotely. Meeting is a social thing, is not something you do to get strategy done or something similar. And I think that's the most important part where I think that needs to be watched out for. Other than that, if you want to start a new company, you'll have so many things to do and so many problems to have. If you do it remotely or not doesn't really make any difference. So just go and iterate and get better while you do it.
Yeah, that's a good closing proposal. And as we come to the end of our interview and the session today, we always ask the question to our guests regarding the actual trends you're seeing in the industry, especially in the e-commerce. So what technological trends do you observe actually, and how they will affect us in the future?
From what I see, I think especially with bigger customers, you will see a lot more software development than you previously saw, and a lot less proprietary closed source tools that they use. So it's either open source, or it's self-built, or it's like a collection of libraries that are put together with a bit of glue code. But these companies want and need to be in control of what they're delivering to customers. And that means that they need to be in control of that software. And that means it needs to be open source and or built by us, by them. That's probably one of the biggest differences I see. For that also, possibly you have like specialized APIs for smaller parts that you need to use or should use, like payment, and there's probably a lot more things coming down the line that will be similar. And the other part is, I think, like you have the real bigger SaaS providers like a Shopify in the e-commerce space that just will continue to gain real big traction. And I think that's the big ones in the e-commerce space.
Yeah, cool. Super. So that fits perfectly into that what we see actually, the composable approach, we call it, so that you have APIs which are consumed by the business or by the developers itself, and putting all together in kind of a customer journey and customer presentation layer, which is in the end owned by yourself, and then you can really make the difference regarding your customers. So we're coming to the end. Oliver, it was a pleasure to talk to you today. Don't forget to tune in, dear audience, to the next episode, and don't forget to subscribe. Oliver, let's say thanks to you and see you next time.
Thank you, Markus. It's been a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Catch the Tornado podcast. Make sure you subscribe us on your favorite platform, and see you next week.